On today's show, we have on Scott Dekorte from Word Deed Ministries. We talked to Scott about his background, what inspired him to get into the line of mission work, and then different types of mission work and what Word Deed does specifically. Then also, going forward, what are the best ways to do mission work? How can you get involved? How can you support the efforts of Word Deed and other organizations as well? So it's a very cool episode. We appreciate Scott coming in, taking the time, and we hope you learned as much as we did. So without further ado, here is Scott Dekorte. Well, we are here for, what is this, episode 17? I think so.
Don't ask me.
Yeah. It comes after 16, 17.
I edited the last couple, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it's all been a blur. But today we are, happy to be joined by Scott Dekorte. So Scott is from Word Deed Ministries. And maybe, Scott, introduce yourself, man. What's your background? Who's Scott Dekorte? Let us know.
Sure. Yeah. It's a privilege to be here on Real Talk. Hopefully today we have some real talk on global missions and international development.
Indeed.
I'm Scott Dekorte. I work for Word Deed. A little bit of background on myself.
Yeah,
Sure, yeah. Give us the rundown.
Yeah. Where am I from? Grew up in the Niagara region in Reformed Church. Went to a Reformed school, grade school, high school. Yeah. Ended up going to Brock University for business administration degree.
Really? I almost took that program.
You did? Almost?
Almost, yeah.
You went to Mac, right?
Yeah. I was like, Mac, Brock. Stay
Clearly, Brock. You're an Niagara boy, though.
Let's go to stick at Brock. It was great. It was a great school for business. I really liked it.
Yeah. Cool.
And there is a bit of a story how I got from a business focus to a missions focus.
Right. Yeah.
Tell it.
Here we go.
Spill the beans, man.
We have a long time.
Half the can, maybe. I don't know.
So starting in high school, I kind of had a pull towards, maybe becoming a pastor or something like that, something involved in kingdom work full time. Yeah. Didn't really know what that looked like, wasn't clear in my mind. Yeah. Then I grew up in a Dutch family with a landscaping company, and I'm the oldest in the family. Right. So the only guy too, the only boy. So I had a responsibility to, as any good Dutch boy would, his family landscaping company.
Yeah, take it over, yeah.
As any Dutch boy has.
The classic tradition goes, the local.
It's a little bit of a cultural thing around here.
On the way over, I asked Lucas, do you think he's from the landscaping company?
I said, yeah, probably.
Yeah, so I am. Anyway, I had that responsibility on me of, worked 8 summers in it, kind of learning the ins and outs of it. Maybe I should go into business, start to take over, that kind of future thinking for career-wise. Mm-hmm. Going through Brock, everything is about money, right? Business. Why are you in business? Well, you're to make money. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that kept getting pressed upon me. I did an accounting internship, did a stock market investment internship, and everything was about money. And I kind of got sick of that, hearing that, and I wanted to say, there's got to be more to life, right?
Yeah.
Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ, that's what's going to last. And does money last? No. Anyway, my third co-op, after the first 2, I went to Africa, a small country called Malawi. Started a chicken company there. Which is, to grow meat chickens, broilers, and then sell them, with the hope that profit would be used to grow a local seminary there, a theological seminary.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was volunteer based, but such an eye-opening experience for me, using my business background in a mission kind of setting. And that really opened my eyes to a global perspective, as well as doing traveling across Europe. When I went to an international business school in France, got an experience to see different cultures, get a little bit of a global mindset. And I remember sitting down one night, I was creating a workbook called The Basics of Biblical Business for the seminary that I was, helping out with this chicken farm, but I was also teaching some business course there as well for pastors.
Okay.
And it kind of struck me like, money can be used for good and so much good in the Lord's kingdom. And that kind of shifted my passion. I said, for the rest of my life, one night every week, I want to do something for the Lord's kingdom. Just one night, just Thursday nights, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe I challenge you two with that too. Like,
Interesting.
take one night and just dedicate it to the kingdom, whether it's church work, whether it's outside of that. Little did I know I would end up full-time in mission work at that point. But that was kind of a pivotal moment. And then coming back, finishing my business degree. Before I even finished, I saw this application on Facebook for Word Deed Ministries. Not thinking much of it. While still in Africa, I applied, sent in some of my past, my history. Didn't really think I would get hired or into it. Went through a couple rounds of interviews, some testing.
What was the position?
Position is for what I'm in now.
Your current job.
Okay. Is for public relations.
Yeah.
And so that means talking to schools, churches, businesses, donors here in North America, inspiring them about stories happening around the world.
Yeah.
But the other half of my businesses, or the other half of my job, is to work alongside of local partners in Central and South America to develop their projects. And we can get into that more, but
cool.
That's kind of where the Lord had brought me. And so it's humbling to be where I am. And I've been there for 2 years now at Word Deed.
Cool.
So I have a lot to learn in terms of global missions and international development.
Yeah.
So much. So I'm not an expert, I can't say I'm an expert in it, but it's just something I really want to share with everyone, young people, old people, like what the Lord is doing.
No, I think it's in a similar vein as what we're doing with the podcast here too. Like, we don't pretend to come with any sort of high level of expertise, but we're interested in learning fundamentally, and then also just having the conversation. So with your experience, I think we'll be able to open up kind of a new lane and a new world for our audience and for us too. So it's exciting.
Great. You're like the first guest who laid out an outline for us, and one that we didn't even touch. So
okay,
so this is great.
Yeah,
you made our life way easier, and this is going to be awesome. So I want to ask you a question, because I was also in business in university.
Yeah, sure.
How do you use your business degree in your job now? I always get asked that.
Yeah.
Now it's a little easier because I own a business, but
right
before you're like, I don't know. But
I think I use it every day. Critical thinking, dealing with finances in missions, how to wisely steward money given to us and use it overseas. Working with people, human resources, working with marketing, public relations, social media, videography.
Yep. Cool.
In a way, the Lord was really preparing me through that business course to be where I am.
Yeah.
And he does that in most people's lives too. When you're 16 to 18 and you're like, what am I going to do? I'm stressing out over it. I'm thinking about it so much. Honestly, the Lord will lead you step by step as long as you're willing to be steered.
Yeah, you got to go and do things, but
You're right. Like, you can't steer a parked car.
Yeah,
you're not going to get anywhere. So,
that's great. That's a little sound bit I'm going to pull out of here.
There you go.
That's great.
Scott Dekorte.
That's a good answer though, because people always want to see like a direct relation to a schooling, but this is like, it's a great story how you get into this, and I think this is going to be good work.
So you were chicken farming in Africa. What was the country again?
Yeah, Malawi.
Okay.
It's just above South Africa, near the southern part of Africa.
All right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And that was with your school program, like at Brock, or was that a mission thing separate from Brock?
It was through Brock.
Okay.
I was part of the co-op program, which gets you involved in different companies, etc. And so through the Lord's leading, I got led to an organization working there, and they said, "Hey, we have this opportunity for you to work there."
Yeah.
And so, it was the third co-op opportunity, but I came back, and a half year later, I got an award from the head of the Goodman School of Business for going and for doing something based on volunteer, so not being paid, and an international co-op. They'd never seen that before.
Cool.
Yeah, and I was totally taken aback by that. And what an opportunity for the gospel. Like, I went for a theological seminary, Christian working overseas.
Yeah.
So such a such a neat opportunity to be a light in a secular university too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Totally. That's fascinating. So then you heard about Word Deed on Facebook and you're like, well, I'm here doing mission work. How long did you go there? Like 4 months?
4 months.
4 months. Yeah. Okay.
It was just a Kickstarter just to get it started.
Yeah.
And then it up to the locals to take ownership of it and go
Cool.
with it.
Did you know anything about chicken farming before going there?
Great question.
Landscaper.
Yeah. I knew how to lay stone and, but I didn't know anything about chickens, but they knew about chickens and they knew about local chickens. There's special different varieties of chicken. So not a farmer by any means, but
cool.
It's not about what you can always bring. No, it's about what they have available and you can help them organize and teach
systems,
business.
Systems. There you go.
There you go.
Cool. Clicking in.
Cool.
Well, because we had an actual chicken farmer, because Mike Hutton is a chicken farmer.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'd be interested if we should get them both on at the same time. They can talk chickens. Not that people are that interested in that. But,
Sure. Yeah, I wanted to ask you what does Word Deed do? Like, let's explain to us like what's the thrust of Word Deed as an organization, and then I guess your role there. But like you said, you're in public relations and raising money for this work, and that So tell us about the work.
So Word Deed is a ministry that works with like-minded believers across different denominations, and we're Reformed relief and development organization. So it's a diaconal kind of ministry that works in relief, meaning natural disasters, etc., even COVID food relief this past year, and then development, which is longer term, growing different partners around the world, growing projects, whether that be schools, in Haiti, whether that be medical clinics in Guatemala, an AIDS clinic in South Africa, theological seminary in Malawi, Indonesia, all we do all different kinds of work.
Oh, cool.
And so we've been around for about 25 years. I think this is our 26th year. And we strive to serve the physical needs of the most poor. So the deed, and also the spiritual needs. So the word and deed, spiritual and physical needs.
So how does that differ from other organizations that like, how does your model differ?
So we kind of have 3 pillars upon the way that we work that determine our strategy, that determine the way that we work with partners. And so first, it's gospel centrality. We believe that the gospel has to be at the center of every single project that we do, or else we will not see lives transformed and we will not see development take place. So that means working alongside of local churches. That means working when needed in training, teaching about different doctrine, growing believers in their local setting. Secondly, that's dealing with indigenous leadership. So we do not send Westerners to the projects to work on them and to grow them. And that is done by local believers, local Christians in their environment. They already understand their culture. They know their language. They know the problems that are facing their community. And so we work alongside of them, our partners, you'll hear that, partner, to grow and develop their community. Thirdly, we desire to have our projects become self-sufficient. So what that means is that we hope that projects do not become dependent on foreign funding, like Word Deed. We don't want to be with a project for many, many years. We want to see them develop and grow and look to their local community for funding and grow that way.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So it is, I guess this plays into your business degree, but I guess it's more about building the business so that it's profitable, so that it can sustain itself and not be reliant on funds from, say the West, or from just sponsors or from donors, or which I feel like maybe that's how a lot of missions are set up. Like a lot of times when our missionaries are sent, they're being funded by a mission aid board or our mission board. And that funding is continual because it needs to be. I guess they got to feed their families and stuff. But I guess this is different, right? Building organizations that can sustain themselves. So,
yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And when you get into it, it's really interesting to see that on a global scale. So since the 1960s, $3.2 trillion from the World Bank has been given out in government aid to developing countries.
Wow.
And some people look back and they say, what has happened over the last 50, 60 years? Where has all that aid gone to? And sure, it's gone into buying mosquito nets for people in Zambia. It's gone into immunizations for children, and it's done many good things. But the work is not ongoing because the people themselves, their mindsets are not changed. And so that is kind of a key lesson that's been learned in the global development world, and one that can be biblically answered too.
So via local partnerships is kind of what you're saying.
Via local partnerships and an understanding of independence, and that people themselves have dignity. They have, they have self-esteem, and not in themselves, of course, in the Lord, but they can work to, grow their local small business, and maybe with a microfinance institute, they can grow a local school, and with that, the church too.
Yeah, no, there's definitely pride and dignity in work, right? Which is a very biblical concept as well.
Yeah.
I did, the one, I guess, mission experience I have is in high school. I went to Kentucky.
Yeah.
This was with SWAP, which is serving with Appalachian people.
I went too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, it was a great trip. I had a fantastic time. And I think the cool thing about SWAP was that it wasn't just like handing out money to people. It was like the homeowner was invested in it. Like they had a sense of pride and dignity in the work because they would pay for the cost of the goods, the cost of the materials, and then we would provide the labor and the expertise for free. Or expertise is in scare quotes perhaps because you're a bunch of 15-years and a couple of 20.
I asked you about that. You didn't even know what you were doing. So
oh, I didn't.
But you were digging holes and putting poles in and whatever.
We just it helps out people. So that was a fun trip, and I think it was a useful and helpful thing. But maybe does that get into I guess the way you guys like view poverty in terms of it isn't just giving away funds. It's also helping people to grow their own community and to kind of like you said, kind of have a sense of agency as well. Do you guys have a working definition of poverty at Word Deed?
Well,
or how does Scott?
The Bible has a working definition of poverty.
Yeah.
Maybe not clearly spelled out word for word. Oh, that's poverty.
Yeah.
But poverty can be seen. Let me ask you the question: what do you think poverty is? What is poverty? And just open-minded.
Well, obviously, lack of money, but
right.
I think it's more than that. It's more.
There's no way up, no hope. No way out.
Yeah, I think that's like debilitating almost, right? Like it's
poverty is also kind of a mindset in a way. Not that you choose it necessarily, but I think once you're stuck in it.
But it has a lot of factors. Obviously, like you can. I mean, there's certain political factors that feed into that, and obviously circumstances with like if you're trying to be, you're trying to farm, but you're not really. You're kind of sitting in a desert or something. Like, I mean,
it's also a generational thing too. Like if your parents and their parents and their parents.
There's obviously tons to it, but in essence, I mean.
Stuck in a system. Yeah.
Lack of money.
It's a lack of money and opportunity,
mindset,
maybe.
I think.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because the way that we define poverty or we look at poverty will define how we respond, how we try to solve poverty.
Yep.
So a very helpful book on this is When Helping Hurts. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's the recommended read for everyone who goes on a mission trip or before a mission trip. When Helping Hurts, produced by the Chalmers Center. And so I kind of derived their definition of poverty. But if you believe poverty is a lack of knowledge, then you will educate the poor. If you believe poverty is oppression by powerful people, like politics, you will work for social justice. If you believe poverty is the sins of the poor, then you will evangelize the poor. And finally, if you believe that poverty is a lack of material resources, then you will give material resources to the poor. So poverty viewed by a lot of North Americans, the Western world, is viewed in terms of material well-being. How many hours of electricity do they have access to? Can they pay for that electricity? Does the government have the infrastructure for that electricity in that country? That's a measure. For example, we view the rest of the world as 1 billion. They're called the bottom billion. They live on $1 a day.
Yep.
And then the next 2.6 billion live on $2 a day. Americans on average live on $90 a day. And I would dare say even in our communities, it's much higher than that.
Sure.
That's the average American.
Yeah.
So if we determine poverty is a lack of physical, material things, we are going to respond that way. The Chalmers Center defines poverty is a result of broken relationships. Poverty is a result of broken relationships. 4 main broken relationships. When God created the earth, he created it good. And he said, this is good. He created man to have a relationship with God.
Yep.
Man has a relationship with himself, his view of self. Man has a relationship with others around them, community, and a relationship with creation, the cultural mandate, right? So there's 4 relationships there. Then the fall happened, and those relationships were broken. So the relationship with God was broken. Spiritual intimacy was lost. Relationship with self, the view of self was broken. Dignity. Your relationship with others was broken. How we relate to each other, not in love, not in service, was broken. Self-centeredness. And finally, our relationship with the rest of creation was broken too. So how does that lead to poverty? Well, it leads to poverty in so many aspects, because if we're broken people, we don't have a right relationship with the Lord, we are going to be broken with those 3 other relationships too.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. Just with those 4 things, like I'm just picturing like any one of those relationships being broken can just lead right down that road. Like even if you have a broken relationship with yourself, mental, like we just talked about mental health with Rhonda Weirsman last episode.
Okay. Yeah. And from Elisha House.
Yeah. And so that, if you just have a broken, relationship with yourself, you can very easily deteriorate into a state where you can't even sustain yourself, like spiritually, mentally, physically. And then that, that very easily can be defined as poverty.
Right. So you can have a low self-esteem, or you have a really high view of yourself too. That's the other side of things.
Yeah. Right.
Let's say we have broken relationship with others. How does that affect poverty? Like you can either become self-centered because you don't have a relationship with others, or you begin to exploit others. And that's what we were talking about, political oppression or power.
Yeah. So
with creation, for example, we either become lazy because we're not, working and making things creative, or we become workaholics on the other side of things.
Yep.
So North Americans, Western thinkers, we are just as broken as developing people in developing nations. We are just as poor.
Yeah.
In those 4 ways.
Yeah.
So before we even begin to work with developing countries or partners, we have to see that we are broken in ourselves too.
So if we're just as poor in those 4 ways, then why doesn't that translate materially?
Well, we're just as broken. Yeah.
Right.
Like it could be greed that's just as broken as, a lack of, I guess.
I agree with that.
Sure.
That's a good that's a good way to describe poverty.
Right.
But then I'm just curious, so
why are we richer?
Why doesn't it manifest that way in South America or Africa or wherever compared to here?
Right.
Big question, perhaps.
Well, if we look at it, we may be richer in terms of our view of creation, or we may have more material things, but that doesn't mean that we have a good relationship with the Lord. So if you fly to a slum in Kenya, and you go to see the church there, it's going to be a 10 by 12 tarped box, essentially.
Yep.
But the people have a much closer relationship with the Lord than we may have here. For example, when they pray, and this is my experience in Malawi too, Lord, thank you for life. When's the last time you heard that off your pulpit? Lord, thank you just for breath today, for life. Lord, pray for my son who's going blind. Lord, pray for me as I go home to my husband, who I know will probably beat me. And we see this poverty here too, but they have an ultimate dependence upon the Lord for their life, for their daily bread. We pray, Lord, give us our daily bread. They literally live that. And so their spiritual intimacy with the Lord, that relationship may be much stronger than ours here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And while we have maybe a better relationship with material things, with our work, with our view of, money, that kind of thing, we may have a better understanding of that. We may lack, and we have to be able to learn from others too, and developing all over the world, developing countries. So
North America has a spiritual poverty problem.
You got it.
And Africa is a material poverty, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. Or that connection with creation, or that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it varies from place to place, but even like I would think relationships could be very strong even in a materially poor area, whereas here we could be very detached from the world and still get by quite well.
For sure,
right? We don't need to talk to people to get business done usually,
especially now.
And your relationship doesn't need to be good with people to you could be very greedy and you could be the worst person ever to deal with, but you still are very wealthy, and maybe because of that.
They often have a better sense of community than we do. Definitely. And you'll hear that. We're individual.
This is the one.
I can't say it.
We both stumbled on this word.
Individualistic.
We're both. We should both try this before we go.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
It's actually a tough one.
That's a tough one.
You in your head, you're like, it's not that bad, and then it starts coming off your mouth, and you're like, oh man, my tongue just in knots.
I love that.
Good.
Yeah.
I love it. We're very individualistic, right? Mm-hmm. And and that's not as prevalent. We talked to a few missionaries too who said that's not the
biggest difference.
Yeah, the biggest difference.
Right. That's interesting that they said the same.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
So if that's our definition of poverty, just carrying on with that, what is the solution then?
Well, that changes the way you look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was going to ask you if I hit you with a question back, perhaps. So you guys are focused on I guess it seems like Africa and Central South America. Is that kind of where the work's been done so far?
I can clarify that for you. Yeah, we have about 55 different projects in 13 countries ongoing. Yeah, South and Central Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess we just discussed, it seems like North America has the spiritual poverty, whereas many of these other places that are more materially impoverished don't have the spiritual poverty. So why, I guess if you guys define poverty along those four poles of, broken relationship with God, with others, with self and creation, why choose to focus on the areas where they don't have material goods like we have here? I don't know. I guess it's more of you said kind of a deacon focused sort of organization. So you're focusing more on the material, I guess, maybe.
So just to clarify that point, we are all broken in humanity. So while they may have a stronger sense of connection with the Lord, that doesn't mean that the whole country does. And so it's not exactly black and white. If we look at it that way.
Yeah.
Because you could say you have a good relationship with the Lord and the Canadian next door has no relationship with the Lord. So it varies within the country. So why do we just work with deeds, and why the word?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Basically. Because we spent this time talking about poverty. Yeah. Okay, what is poverty?
So why are we just
poverty
working
is not
with
just
deeds?
the material.
Right.
Yeah.
So are we opposed?
Yeah, sure. Speak to that.
Does that not make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So great question. The solution to poverty is restoring those broken relationships, restoring those four.
Okay.
And that comes through the Lord Jesus, and that comes through a gospel focus.
Right.
Right? So Colossians 1, verse 19 to 20 says this: For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him, that's Christ, to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. So through the cross, all things are reconciled to himself. Reconciliation is restoring relationships, is connecting our relationship to the Lord, to others, to ourselves, and to creation. And when you have someone who has been transformed by the gospel and reconciled in all those four relationships, you will see, growth. You will see, growth with your job, and your view of creation is connected. So you want to fill the earth and subdue it. You'll want to serve others in community because your view of others has changed. Your view of self has changed. You are not the center of the universe anymore. The Lord is. And your relationship with the Lord has changed too. So in the heart of every project, it begins with the word. That's why the word is first. It's not deed and word, it's word and deed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Christ has to be at the center of every project. But then from that, you can start to begin developing the material or the external things.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense.
It does, yeah. I wonder if I don't disagree with this approach. Like we often focus on, areas that are materially lacking or impoverished. But I guess we don't do mission work to richer people who are spiritually impoverished, perhaps. Like we, even in our churches here, like we talked to Pastor Ian back in, this is probably the summer, I guess now, and like the work they're doing at Mercy Church, which they're in McQueston, which is a an economically what would you say, deprived, or not as, it's not as economically well off as other areas of Hamilton. So I wonder if maybe you can speak to this or not. Like, do we choose to go into poor areas because there's an easier, tangible way to help those people, and then like materially, right? And then by doing that, it's also a very good in with the gospel. Whereas if we were to focus on rich people, like they don't really need us. Like they do need the gospel, but like they don't need our help. Right? They wouldn't see it like that. Do you think that's the mindset?
I know what you're getting at for sure. So definitely when working with the poor, we are poor too. We have to keep that in mind. Yes. But we're working with the materially poor. Yeah. It does provide an opportunity for the gospel to enter, for sure. Yeah. But the danger is that because there's money being focused in a certain area, then all of a sudden people will become Christians. Those are called rice Christians. So there was mission organizations about 200 years ago that they said, oh, these people are poor. They need food. They need rice. Oh, yeah. So we have to buy rice for them. And we'll just flood the community with rice. Everyone has rice and everyone comes to church because that's where you can get the rice. Yeah. The funding left, and how big was the church after that? Dwindled away to almost nothing. So they were there for the rice. They weren't there for the gospel, which is what we have to start with. So why... The second answer to that question, why do we work with the poor? We follow our example, and that's Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ saw the need, right? Yep. And the Bible says this: the blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. That's in Luke 7, verse 22. Matthew 4, verse 23. Jesus went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. The gospel came not for the rich or the powerful. The gospel comes for the weak of society, for the poor.
I think the gospel comes for all. Like Jesus spent times with the prostitutes.
It does. But the Lord is also pleased to use the gospel through weak means to show his glory and his strength.
Agreed. Yeah. But he spends times with the prostitutes and the tax collectors.
He does both.
Yeah. Which are like, those guys are rich, but outcasts.
Thankfully, the gospel has come for all. Yeah. But the Lord he saw the need, right? And we hear these texts like, if you see your brother and he doesn't have clothing, why will you not give it to him? If he's hungry, will you not feed him? And so that is our Christian calling too, to reach out in love and compassion. So often that's easy to explain. We have a love and a desire to share Christ's love through material things sometimes. It's easy to have a heart for the poor, but it's hard to have a mind for the poor and how to do development well.
Yes.
Are you following me there?
That makes sense.
It's easy to say, I see a need there. I want to give. Let's have a soup kitchen, right? Let's chop carrots, get our onions, put it in a pot and distribute food. There's a need there for sure. People are hungry and there's nothing wrong with that. The hard part is having a mind for the poor, meaning if we feed them this week, they're going to come back next week expecting the same thing, but they aren't going to become independent. They're not going to become self-sufficient.
Right.
So we have to just think about the poor in terms of their own dignity and their own long-term well-being.
Yeah.
So how do you do that different then? So I'm thinking like, so how does Word and Deed work the word into, I guess it starts with the word,
Sure.
but they see the deed a lot of times and not the word, or the deed and the word is, tacked on, like these rice Christians, as you call them.
Yeah.
So how do you separate those things so that they see the word as important and not just, what they're getting physically or materially out of it?
I have a little story to kind of explain.
Yeah, for sure.
Explain that idea. So we about 10 years ago, there was a hurricane in Nicaragua, decimated the coast of Nicaragua, and we began working with a local partner there called Palabra y Hechos, which means word and deed actually in Spanish. It's kind of funny.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they named
They
named themselves word and deed. But anyway, they're independent from us, but we work alongside each other. And they began working with farmers who were rebuilding their farms after this hurricane had wiped out their crops.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're agriculturally teaching them new techniques to planting rice, to growing corn, etc.
Yep.
So they had worked on that for about 7 years. They'd given seed. They had helped train these farmers. And along the way, they did bring the gospel, for sure. But the people weren't getting the message. They were still planting rice, not in rows, which makes it easier to weed. They're still scattering the seed like their ancestors did generations ago. And so even after 5 years, there was no progress. There was no change. And so you say, yeah, we brought the deed. We brought seeds. We brought agricultural technicians that were teaching them agricultural new techniques, etc. The deed is all there. And why is there no change? It's because they didn't have a proper worldview, a proper those 4 relationships weren't restored. And so their view of work was tilted and shifted. So for example, their view of work and their view of creation, it was a curse to go in the field and weed your fields. So they never weeded their fields. With others, husbands would never help their wives. Their responsibility was only in the field for a certain amount of the day. And wives would always be independent. Okay. I'm just laying the groundwork here. For themselves, they always believed that they would be poor because their ancestors had been poor. Their local tribe had always been poor. And then with God was not someone who is a creator and sustainer of all things. God was kind of you hear about these ancestral practices that the Lord, not the Lord, but these ancestral spirits kind of controlled whether their fields were productive or not, right?
Sure. Oh,
so they were planting straight rows of rice, but all those other things, their view of family, that had not changed. And until the gospel came in through the local technicians and through the trainers to say, no, like husbands, you can help your wives after dinner clean your pot. You can assist your wife by, helping with the children, or no, what you do in the field is you're called to serve and work in the field to pick those weeds as a cultural mandate, and the view of the Lord had to change too, because how hard is it to grow crops when if they fail, then that's not my fault. That's just what the Lord wanted, or what God or the ancestral spirits wanted. So unless you have a foundation of the gospel to change your worldview on all these other things, they will not change.
Right. Interesting.
So yeah, go ahead.
So how does the word come? So you said through technicians. So is it through the guy teaching them to plant their rice in rows that he's like, well, giving them a Bible lesson before they walk out in the fields in the morning, or like how? Because when we think of mission work in the church context, we think of sending a missionary And we think of, at least in my mind, you have mission and mission aid, and mission aid is like, is the deed, is like giving so that the people, not so that the people come to listen, but it definitely helps to make an opportunity for the missionary who goes out to preach. And so you have the preacher who is like, we talked to a couple missionaries who say, well, yeah, you would preach in a market, or you preach in a village square, or you would set up a Bible study or a school where, people would come, and eventually you try to grow a church and establish a church. And so that's very mission oriented. But how does your, like, Word and Deed seems to be more focused on the enterprise of like fixing how they do agriculture really does help them, and then bringing the word through that.
Okay.
So how
continuing with that example. So that was the first 5 years.
Okay.
Then the technicians learned we have to bring the gospel, present it with them, and present it to them. And so they started doing that. They started teaching them the biblical view of work, the biblical view of family, the biblical view of all these things, and teaching the Lord, you need the Lord as your savior. That changed the way they worked. Out of that, a small church sprung up.
Okay.
Later on. And now there's a small Reformed Christian school. There's a small Reformed church there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that came out of the development work.
Without the presence of an ordained missionary?
Right.
Wow,
Ordained. No.
Right.
Local,
because we would send
people.
an ordained minister to be called to a mission post. So without all of that, they still had a church spring up.
But there were local Christian leaders there.
Right.
Nicaraguans that understood Reformed view of the gospel, and they were leading, the project, and they were our partners. And from that, a local Reformed church began.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So kind of the worldview comes through in the enterprise building side of things. It seems like they teach you like here's how to do agriculture better, and here's why we do it better, for God's glory, and you have a calling to work, et cetera, and then it kind of bleeds into there. So that's kind of neat.
I think our historical view of missions is, missionaries are for the Bible explanation, the theological training, and then the diaconal ministries are for the economic development, material well-being. We have to keep those two. We have to join those two together.
Yeah.
Jesus taught, in the synagogues, and he healed the poor. Those two inherently, they have to be together, because without it, you won't see development. You need the gospel and you need development. So
it sounds like
I hope that they
can really eat, they blend really well. But I think the intentional mission aid with the mission worked into it.
It has to be done the right way.
Aid, it has to be mission. Yeah. But I think that it works into our lives too. I think to what you asked, Lucas, was why do we always bring the material, or why do we always bring our wealth to people without it? I think part of that's because we have it. So we, especially just our community. I wouldn't say our country, or obviously North America is wealthier than most other continents. But as a community, we bring our wealth and our blessings to even downtown Hamilton, because they don't have that. So I think whatever we're blessed with, we look to give away. I think that's part of our mandate
for sure.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. That's even 100%. We're even called to do that. And it can be given in certain situations when it makes sense. Yeah. So someone had to hire those local technicians. Someone had to provide the initial seed, right? Someone had to provide the fertilizer. And that's where Word and Deed comes in to fill that gap. Where the people themselves can't do that, then Word and Deed comes in, fills that gap with donor support, of course, and much prayer. And that's where we can kind of assist with development along the way.
Yeah, cool.
But we're not sending T-shirts overseas and then
just backing out, or
I kind of have a funny story. That just
Go
brought
ahead.
up-
Go
I used to
ahead.
play for the Pelham Panthers soccer team. Okay.
All right.
Travel soccer here in Niagara growing up. And so when I went to Malawi, I went to a tribal ceremony where they crowned their chief. And I was the only white person allowed to be there because I gained their trust. And lo and behold, guess what I see?
What?
A Pelham Panthers t-shirt worn, like the logo Pelham Panthers on it, worn by one of the people in the crowd. And I took a picture. I said, how in the world does my soccer team jersey get to them?
Yeah.
And it's because it's the world's view of aid. It's because of how we've done aid for so long.
We just
Sending things
That's
over.
mind-boggling.
It was just totally crazy. And it also shows you how globalization has changed everything too.
Oh yeah.
As a side note, but
Yeah.
That's
Just-
crazy. So they obviously know that is aid from the West.
yeah.
Are people usually okay with that? Like, I mean,
Which people?
well, like you're saying, like this is like a tribal ceremony or something. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, to
Right.
me, that brings in all sorts of images of like something very primitive.
It really was. Yeah.
So they're okay to be wearing a jersey of a Western soccer team from the Niagara. Like it doesn't
Right.
really click with me like that. It's
They
like,
probably just want shirts. Like
They want shirts and they want them cheap too. And they come cheap because they're donated.
yeah.
so they just, and yeah. So how do people view,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe you could speak to this. How do those people view that aid then? Because obviously Word Deed is intentional about helping them also with the education side of it, like learning how to farm or learning how to do that chicken farming business, right?
Yeah.
If you were just to go and give them chickens or go and give them shirts and go and give them rice,
Mm-hmm.
how do they just view that material? What's blessing from the West? Do they welcome that usually, or is that something that they would say, you know what, this is just, this will last so long and then it's gone? And
Are they more excited
Who
about
knows?
the enterprise side of things? Like when you guys come along, they're like, oh, someone to teach us how to, like, or they don't see it like that probably.
So, there's a lot of thoughts, well, especially in Africa, on the colonialistic mindset of the
Mhm.
West, imperialistic
Yep.
view of we are the father, and then you are the kind of the son, and
Yep.
we can train you, we
Right.
can teach you.
Yep.
So just listen to us.
right,
That is very, very not correct. Like the reason why local indigenous leaders are such a key part of Word Deed is because local indigenous leaders, they understand their people, they understand their systems, and to come in there and say, "Oh no, this is how you're actually supposed to work as a community. This is how your church is supposed to function," that is completely wrong, and that's something that I think we have to repent of, and realizing that they're not like they're made in the image of God. They have the creative mind. They have so many assets and so many things themselves that they can grow
Yeah.
their community with.
that's interesting because we view our culture as in ways, I can't say superior, but more efficient in business or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talked to Reverend Versteg too, who was in P&G, and he described when they set up a seminary, it was hard to get people, the locals who were leaders in that seminary to show up on time or to it was very hard to do anything. You couldn't get things done. So, and to him, it was a struggle, and it just takes patience to be okay with that.
Yeah.
On the one hand, but he did allude to the fact that you do kind of want to change the way they view, that relaxed attitude or something. So
Sure.
to me, it was like, well, okay, why do we go in there and change their culture? Why wouldn't you go in there, be okay with their culture, and then work at what you can in the way you can? He said, well, it's very difficult because they don't show up. So what do you can't preach if they don't come. So, but so some of that's like, yeah, I mean, you want the indigenous leaders or the locals to spearhead those efforts.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, how do you balance that with the, the expertise that maybe you have. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So there are huge cross-cultural differences when working with a different culture that have to be overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the time example is one of them. Yeah, there's kind of like a joke between the Westerners and the Africans. The West is always right on time, and the Africans, they're right on time too, but it's their time. So they're an hour, half hour late. That's okay, because they saw their uncle along the way, and they had to have a conversation with him, because what's more important is that relationship with him than the time.
Right.
The relationship with whatever they were late for, in our view. So we have our constructs in our culture that make up who North America is. But then we also have South Americans and their constructs of priorities. Right. So I don't know if you've heard of Hofstede's 5 theories, and it gets into different individualistic versus, community differences. Right. So the way, even the way we talk to each other, indirect versus direct communication. Germans are known as the most direct communicators. They will say, "You were late. Why were you not on time?" Their trains are never late in Germany. Yeah, it's true. Been there. But then you have indirect communication saying, like, there was once a story of an eagle, and he didn't catch his fish on time and didn't bring the fish back to the nest, so the young one died. That's a very indirect way of saying you were late. You weren't there on time. You didn't get the fish when you had to. Interesting. So that's maybe how that'll be communicated in another culture. So there are huge cultural differences that need to be overcome. To answer your question, we have a lot to learn from them. We go with a mindset of humility. We're working alongside of them. So they need to adjust to some of our thinking, and we need to share our thinking when appropriate. And we do have a lot of knowledge in terms of theology, even business practice, enterprise, and they want to hear that from us too. And so that's why we can come alongside and we can share, but always respecting their culture and learning and listening from them too along the way, because we don't have all the answers.
Yeah. It's just tough to grapple with, because even we've had this conversation even about our churches, inside our churches, the diversity in our churches. And actually it was Tim Challies, I think, who mentioned that he had a Cuban couple in his church, and they said, well, we don't find you're very welcoming. And, as Dutch people, you're like, whoa, really? Like, come over for some soup. So, but to them, they are more like, it was more of this, what we're describing, like, you meet your uncle along the way, going somewhere, and that relationship's important. So then he said they would come to church and take 15, 20 minutes to get to their seat because they want to talk to everyone along the way. For sure. Yeah. And that was the way they did that. So even in our context, certain things have to be adapted, especially like to help bring people in. So
you had a point down here on the outline about the global South and sending missionaries to the West, like to North America. Maybe that ties in with like learning from their culture and stuff. But what did you mean by that? Like, do you think Africa should start sending missionaries to us here in North America?
Well, they already are.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. Where? Like all over?
There's multiple occasions. Once I was at a conference and there was a Brazilian missionary there. He told the story of a missionary from the suburbs of Chicago, being raised in Chicago, wanted to go preach to the jungles of the Amazon. Flies to the jungles of the Amazon, works among a local community, a local tribe. They grow up, they experience revival, the gospel, the Spirit is with them. And then they hear about this faraway land. These people are leaving their Lord and they're leaving their churches, and we need to go help them. They fly to Chicago. So people from that same tribe fly back to Chicago, and they preach in the suburbs of Chicago the gospel of Jesus Christ. So if we think we're the only ones sending, the U.S. was not the Philippines sent more missionaries than the U.S. have recently.
Where?
Really? Another thing is, like, in 2025, an historian predicted that the center of Christianity would be in Africa and not in North America and Europe. So the global south is growing in Christianity, and we hear reports of this in India too.
Yeah.
New people groups being reached in China, right? We have a partner that is reaching and has reached about 30 new people groups with the gospel. Just amazing work. And the Spirit is moving and working there. And we are humbled by those reports here at Word Deed and here in North America too. So the global south is growing in terms of their understanding of scripture, and the Spirit is moving and people are being saved. Churches are growing and they're sending missionaries back to us because we're leaving our first love.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, fascinating. I did not know that was going on though. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you guys? Yeah. So
that's amazing.
I guess with that in mind, maybe like does Word.
I didn't know that either until like a year and a half ago when I started learning more about this. Like this is all new to me too.
Yeah.
And I'm just exploding at the seams of like this needs to be heard. Like that's why I'm so excited about talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is good.
Well, and
and you're really about this.
Oh, totally. And your approach too of like the enterprise side of things, helping people build up, businesses and the local economy. So it's more sustainable, and then you can kind of back out and let the locals kind of run it. I think is a fantastic approach. Do you guys have any plans for any efforts or mission efforts here locally, like in Canada? I'm thinking maybe a particular context would be a lot of reserves across the country are, it's like third world conditions out there. And a big problem is economic opportunity, even though there are definitely churches across the reserves. Like there's a pretty healthy evangelical indigenous population. But have you guys considered anything along those lines at all?
We have helped in America before with the Hurricane Katrina in the Mississippi.
Okay.
We have sent relief funds there, and I know multiple teams went down. Maybe not just from Word and Deed, but from our churches too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's a small example. We are an international Reformed international relief and development. So we do look internationally. So we would say we focus more on the developing world.
Gotcha.
But there's definitely need in our backyard, and that should not be ignored for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So being an international organization, does that prevent you from helping in the quote unquote backyard, or it's just that's more of your focus is to be in other countries?
That's historically been more of our focus, but I don't think that should limit the way that we think about, like we said, the poor and who we can help.
Scott's like the newbie. He's gonna like go in there and be like, this is who we're helping now.
Well, there's a big need there. Like, it's tremendous.
Yeah.
Like I spent a year in Ottawa working on Parliament Hill, and the MP I worked for, Arnold Viersen, he was on the Northern Affairs Committee. So I would go in and sit in the committee and take notes for him and whatnot. And at the time they were doing a study on the suicide crisis. This is back in like 2016 already, on reserve. And to my knowledge, it's not gotten any better. So like there's a real opportunity there, a real meaning crisis, a real, lack of opportunity economically, like I said. And I think, we could do a lot of good in those communities, I think, with the model that you guys have set out. But
I've been twice to Moose Factory, which is on the bottom of James Bay, which is an indigenous community too. And it's really interesting to see how they're developing too. And they're so isolated, it's hard. Often that's the problem.
It's a big challenge, definitely.
The real problem is the 4 relationships that are broken. That we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. And that doesn't change easily.
Right.
So
mission trips are kind of going off that. Like you went to Kentucky and you're aware of that. So mission trips have a lot of good. They can do a lot of good. They can also do a lot of harm to the local, communities too.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you went into that indigenous community, like our youth group did, and you rebuild or fix whatever was broken, then let's say their church roof gets broken in a few years, and they don't have the financial resources to fix it. Well, who are they going to call?
Yeah.
Are they going to call us again and say, "Oh, by the way, you kind of put our roof together 5 years ago. Can you fix it now?" Well, no, that's their church, right? They didn't take ownership though, because we came in, we built the thing, and we left. So I think that's a little bit of something that we should think about as we deal with even more local kind of even Kentucky, even Virginia mountains, that kind of thinking too.
Appalachia, yeah.
Appalachia.
How do you find local partners? When like indigenous partners? How do you guys go about doing that?
Yep. So we do receive numerous requests in a year from different organizations around the world. And typically we try to start with our Reformed base or a connection to a Reformed church. Sometimes they come through different churches. They come through hearing, oh, there's this, the Nicaraguan partner. There's another Nicaraguan partner that wants to work. So they'll talk to Word Deed. And then we kind of go through a vetting process to see if they share a lot of the same goals in terms of long-term development, in terms of gospel centrality, local leadership, that kind of thing. And then that's kind of how we narrow down who we work with.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So
decision not made lightly, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can't deal with everybody, obviously.
The need is great.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And the poor will always be among you. That's what the Bible says too. But
True.
It doesn't decrease our motivation.
Yeah,
for that way.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Has the need grown this year, or I guess over 2020 with all the COVID lockdowns and such?
It has really grown.
Yeah.
Especially with food relief. Global food economies have been cut short, meaning that, and harvests have been cut short, meaning that there's a huge need for food. We had one of our partners saying they had to, with sticks, beat away the people who were climbing over their walls to get at their food. And the next week, they did end up distributing that food to thousands of people. That was one example early in April. So many examples throughout this year. We ended up distributing through our partners about $600,000 in food relief to the most vulnerable, the most needy, those who had no other option, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy how much of an impact globalization has, like decisions made in North America related to COVID lockdowns and stuff like that have a ripple effect throughout like the supply chains and food chains throughout the world.
Yeah. You think some of these impoverished areas, they live off of like, say, income from coffee or rice or something that they grow. And
if people aren't traveling as much, they're not drinking as much coffee on the go or something.
Well, just like getting it here with the health regulations, even like they probably they want to limit it or whatever. But I was going to ask you off of that with COVID, I guess, but also with you mentioned Hurricane Katrina. You do disaster relief, or natural disaster relief. How do you play mission work into that? I know there's been a lot of effort from our churches on certain disasters around the world, and there's obviously a few big ones here and there, but how does Word Deed play a role in those situations, and then helping build good relationships after that?
Sure. That's often how a lot of our partners are actually grown and how we find them and work with them. To answer a previous question, the Nicaragua example I gave, that was all based off of a hurricane. Now we're still working with them 10 years later.
Oh, okay.
Other examples, for relief, there's an immediate need. And we're not always thinking long-term development right away. You think these people are poor, their houses have been destroyed, they have no access to food. The relief goes to helping those things right away. But we only do so if there's a local partner that we trust or a local church that we're working alongside of to help distribute that, right?
Right.
So once that's established, we will work with those people. An example in the Philippines in 2013, a massive typhoon destroyed many homes, cleared out, just did so much damage. They needed food. So right away, through a partner organization, we sent food relief. And then we started rebuilding. So after relief, there's a rebuilding phase. And then after that, there's a development kind of phase that we hope to see.
Right.
And so working with a partner, SMO, we began rebuilding homes after that. Then a relationship is built. Then we find a local pastor not too far away. He had already been working among that community. He became part of that partner. And out of that sprung Bible study in a local church. And so then that long-term development continues. Right. And since then, we've actually stopped working there because that community is developing and there's a church there already. So Relief brings so many opportunities for the gospel. An example of this past year in COVID is in Ecuador. There was a local Chachi village, which is way off the beaten path. They needed access to food too. So through the Ecuadorian army, we were able to send in some food relief. And one of the ladies, the wives of the army men, she heard about the gospel through our partner in Quinindé, Ecuador. She started a Bible study with some of the other army ladies, and they began a Bible study. And to my knowledge, that's still going on today. And so that's one small example of how the gospel has been used through relief.
Yeah.
In another, I can just keep.
There's just so many. Yeah.
Story time with Scott.
That's great.
There's another country where the churches expect, I think it was a 25% growth in their church membership because of COVID, and not because of just food relief, but because of who is our Lord and who is the Savior and where is God in this. So
kind of created an existential crisis almost.
Yes, but
like made people really think deeply, like, oh, what am I doing here?
I think it has here too, North America.
Sure.
Have we seen that? Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah, in some cases, I think we've been talking about going the other way because we're not going to church anymore, and but yeah,
I saw a stat. It was 10% of Canadians had considered suicide in 2020. 10%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's high.
Yeah, that is really high.
Yeah. We've seen that in the developing world too. We've seen domestic violence double, if not triple, in Colombia, and mental health just skyrocketing in places, especially places with strict lockdowns too.
Yeah.
Where they've lost their job. How can I provide for my family? One thing leads to the next. And yeah, mental health is just terrible.
Yeah.
Families locked together in these tight spaces, and family, fighting with each other. So yeah, we definitely need the gospel here in our churches and our, in the way we work with each other, talk to each other, and across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Such a need for it. I
saw something in there. I can't pick it out while you were talking, but you mentioned something about not letting your differences, the differences of we got 25 minutes or so. You wrote something about not letting your differences, like the differences between, you and say another group of Christian missionaries or mission workers or something, kind of stop you from working together, or don't let that be a barrier or something. If I read that correctly, anyways, I'm curious about that because you said like, well, okay, we went into an area and we found a pastor working locally.
Yeah.
How do you interact with that? Is it like they have to be very aligned with everything you believe, or is there like, how much room is there for give and take there? Like, is an evangelical pastor, the same as a Baptist pastor who's working in that area? How important is that anyways? Like,
sure.
They don't have to be Canadian Reformed or United Reformed or,
I think one of the beautiful things about Word Deed when I joined is I was able to see all these different Reformed Christians coming together from their different churches, working together on a common need of the gospel and for relief too. And I think that was a beautiful thing, something that should be celebrated and something that should be worked on more. So
yeah, for sure.
For example, making a good Dutch soup, you need a number of different items, right? To make a beautiful soup. So different Christians or groups of Christians will have different strengths. So let's say one is chopping up the carrots. One is, breaking apart the onions. They might be crying because they're onions. That's okay though. And then you have the celery cutters. Then you have the chicken broth. Then you have the chicken. Okay. And someone else makes the noodles. When you put that all together and you boil it, it creates such a beautiful thing. It creates a feast, right? So I think sometimes we split apart the carrots and the celeries, and we have to join them together. And when you're talking overseas, when you're talking about the gospel, you can't worry as much about if you're a carrot or I'm a carrot. You got to think about what can you do together to make a feast of the gospel.
It's funny because my mind goes there with mission work or with relief, and then finding a partner that would be faithful to what we believe. But if you said, okay, well, we're going to translate the Bible into a new language, I would say that's amazing work. Go do that. And you wouldn't say, well, is it going to best resemble the ESV or the, New King James, or like, what are you translating it into? Like you would just be like worried about getting the words down on paper and it, meaning what it means. And so I think that's like, it's kind of like two different ways to view that. But I guess you can't let those things bar you from good work, like what you said. So that's interesting, because there's also there's so many other people doing so much work. We just learned about all sorts of URC things when we were chatting with somebody, all sorts of URC work that we had no idea was going on. So
it's cool to see the coordination. Yeah. Do you guys find you typically, like you mentioned the Nicaragua example, do you find you typically work in more agricultural or rural settings, or do you guys help out in urban environments as well?
Yeah, I think typically it's been a mix. There's different projects that we have different partners that are working deep in the heart of cities. And then there are other partners that are working out in the boonies, out in the fields. The Nicaragua example was one of out in the fields. You have to,
Do you find a big difference in people's attitudes, even if it's in the same country, but urban and rural? Like we definitely have a divide in North America in terms of attitudes, urban and rural. Does the same hold true in the global South, as you put it?
Yeah, I think there's different attitudes even in the way you grow up and the way you view the world. If you grow up in a city, you think maybe a little bit bigger about the world, or you think more you have to live and survive, as opposed to the country. I'm not a human geography expert. I'm not going to get into that. But I think when we talk about global missions, even North American missions, we have to think that the world is going to an urban context. We're getting away from a rural context. So some numbers that were presented to me a year ago, in 1910, less than 5% of the population lived in cities. In 2010, more than 50% of the world lived in cities. In less than 30 years, they predict 100%, based on demographics, 100% of people will be living in cities. Almost 100%.
Wow. That's
now I don't know the future, and neither does the demographic, analyzers of trends, but we are moving towards an urbanized context. And what are we doing as missions to prepare for that and to grow, our churches in that context? Yeah.
Fascinating. That kind of ties in, with what Pastor Ian had talked about in that episode too. I mean, it's the same trends hold true in Canada. It's rapidly urbanizing as well. So
it brings its own dangers and stuff too, right? Just talking about people who can't make a living farming or gathering and hunting, and you're talking about there's a lot more.
It's more complicated. There's more different types of people.
More, but there's a lot of opportunity for growing drug use and things like that in the urban setting, and a lot of problems like that, I guess. So what are some things we missed?
I was going to say, I was going to be smooth about it and kind of just transition. Okay, if you want to be, crude,
delete that.
Crude,
go segue. Go.
Yeah, I was going to segue, but anyways,
segue.
Sat on my segue, but no, we didn't really talk about mission trips, like short-term mission trips yet, or maybe short-term versus long-term. We talked a lot about the model you guys have,
right?
But maybe I should ask you this personally, so you don't have to speak on behalf of Word Deed. But
okay,
what are your thoughts on shorter term mission trips, like the typical, like the one I described? Like I went to Kentucky, you went to Kentucky. Yeah. I think it was just for a week. Wasn't super long. Other people I know, like in Guido, you go to DR for a week often or so, or 10 days or whatever it is. What do you think about those short term mission trips? How valuable are they?
Depends if you're asking who they're valuable to.
Yeah, that's a good response.
So when considering going on a mission trip, you have to consider what value will it bring to the partner in their local context. So if we send 20 hardworking Dutch ladies and gentlemen into, to build a school, for example, we may not be considering the local economy and the local stonemasons who can build the same school as well. We may be taking their work. We may be doing the work that the locals can do. We may be creating dependency, like we talked about earlier. We may be just going there to work, feel good about the work that we did, and leave, and not build any relationships or share any of the gospel there. So a little motto I have is, don't go with the Gildan t-shirt, go with the gospel in mind. Yeah. Well, that looks like humility. That looks like going there to serve, to listen with them. Sometimes you have to think about the local partner. Is it going to be a stress on them to have 20 people to host, to feed? That's a consideration we need to have too. Is the time right for the locals? Will they take ownership of let's say, building? If you build a building, will they take ownership of that when you leave? Do they just see, if we need another building built, do we just call the North Americans in and they're going to do it for us? Or are they going to consider building it themselves with their own community's assets and their own local tradesmen? So I think it can be used for a lot of good in the right situations.
Yeah.
And often the most good is applied to those who go, because they see a different perspective of the world. I was introduced to missions by going on a trip. I went to Guatemala, and then I went to Kentucky. We went twice to Moose Factory up north and the indigenous community, like I talked about. And then I went to France. That wasn't for missions, but that gave a little bit more perspective on life on the globe. And then to Africa for that chicken farm, right?
Yeah.
So that all adds to growing a heart and a mind and skills for missions. And I think it's a good thing to do, to gain perspective. It just has to be done in the right way.
Yeah, right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's like anything. Even if you have good intentions, I guess maybe. But yeah, if you think clearly about it before going on it, because I should say I think, but I think that for a lot of people, especially young people, if you go in high school too, yeah. I was going to say that point, which you brought up, is that the good side of it is that you are exposed to what it's like to be in a new environment and kind of the mission context. And that might, inspire you to do further mission work. And obviously in your case, it totally did full time.
Yeah.
But I think also people do end up going there selfishly too, for just selfish reasons, just to, especially if you're going to a more tropical destination, like
you wouldn't want to go vacation.
You go to the DR,
make some concrete,
paint a couple of buildings,
and let your congregation pay for
take
it.
a couple photos for Instagram, like you're all set. So I'm definitely skeptical of those kind of trips in that way. But yeah, the way you put it though, they can be done for good, but you have to consider the locals. But I do think at the end of the day, the people who get the most out of it are probably the people who go from North America.
Yeah, and I would agree. And that's not to say I hate mission trips. Like, no,
they have value.
They have a lot of value when they're in the right context, and like the local partners, they've thought through it before going, that kind of thing.
You traveled all over, and then you didn't expect to get the job at Word Deed. Yeah, right? Yeah. You've been everywhere they work. Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But one of my personal goals is to visit more countries than my age. So I'm 24 right now, and
there you go.
I've been to 27, 28 countries, I think. So if I can just keep that number ahead, then I'll be good for a while.
Yeah.
But
well,
you're in a good spot for it. You just got to look for new avenues every year
to go. Yeah.
That's ambitious. I like that.
Yeah. I think there's 195 countries in the world. So there's more countries than the age I can get to.
You probably won't live that long. That's good. Cool. So I guess maybe we didn't fully get into the scope of like how big Word Deed actually is. Like, so you work there, you're the, I guess, PR guy would be the term you would, what's your official role, I guess? PR?
My official role is public relations and project development. I wear two hats, 50.
Yeah.
So
You got two brims, maybe.
Yeah,
Like that,
sitting sideways.
Yeah, exactly. Coolest guy in Word Deed.
What that does when you can have two, a lot of people at Word Deed have both kind of hats, because then you're engaged in the development, right? And then you're also engaged on the project side, but then you can communicate that, you can bridge that that information gap between what happens there and to people here too. You can share with what the Lord is doing and what the gospel is doing through our partners, and it's an exciting position to be in. So you're kind of on both. You can see both sides. Yeah.
That makes sense. So how many people work at Word Deed? Like, or a couple people?
Yeah, there's 8 of us.
Nice.
Yeah, and full time. There's 7 of us full time and 1 part time, and also lots of volunteers help out with Word Deed and schools, businesses, donors. Word Deed is a collection of all those things. It's not just the 8 staff that try to faithfully do their work. So there's 2 in the United States, and then there's 6 in Canada. 6 of us.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so during, normal non-COVID times, would you, like part of your job, I guess, is flying around to manage these projects and kind of check in with the locals on the ground and make sure things are running along smoothly? Or like, do you have people who you send there for like a couple months, or like, all right, this is your post for a few months, get the locals going, and then, report back kind of thing?
So we do more of the first, less of the second.
Okay.
The second being posting people
longer
there.
term. Yeah.
So that's why I have the locals to work with.
Yeah.
But we do regular reporting.
Yeah.
So that means we go there, and then we sit down with their board, we sit down with their staff, we look at the project, how's it going. We try to help them strategically think through things. And then also there's the financial side of things too. We go through their finances and do an audit, assure that it's being used well. And it's also to build that relationship. As you work with partners, relationships are very valuable. And so you need to keep growing that as you visit. So that visit maybe looks like 2-3 weeks, once a year, kind of thing. Cool. Or every other year, depending on how much work is being done there. But yeah. Then my day-to-day is working a lot on Zoom calls, calling the partners, talking to them, calling others in our staff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so what's one thing we missed?
Something that I kind of really want to share is for young people. Sometimes we talk a lot about these theories of poverty. What is it or what isn't? What can we do?
I had a transition for this. Dang it. I stepped on my transition again. But go ahead. This was going
to be what I moved to.
You're like,
if this wasn't what he identified.
What do we mean? I was going to be like, so if you could speak to young people, what would you like to say?
Now Scott identified it, so now it's very important for everybody.
Yes.
So we're all thinking on the same path. We're all thinking on the same page. So that's great.
Yeah.
Hopefully those listening are following that same path, but where are they going with this?
Yeah. What are they saying? Scott's going to talk about young people. Go.
I have a heart for young people, and that sounds funny as I'm 24 and maybe not considered young, but that desire to see the next generation grow up and know the gospel for themselves personally, but also care about the spread of the gospel in words and in deeds all over the world, and even acting, locally in your local position and thinking globally at the same time, acting locally, thinking globally. What can you do for the kingdom of God, and how will you use your life for the maximum, glory of God too? Mm-hmm. So I kind of had these are 3 thoughts that keep going through my mind often throughout a day. Is if you're wondering what you can do for global missions, you can grow your heart for missions, grow your mind for missions, and grow your passion for missions. Grow your heart for missions, your mind for missions, and your passion. All right. So
what do each of those mean?
What does that look like? Growing your heart for missions means growing deeper in the Word of God, understanding what the kingdom of God is here on earth, but also what it will become in heaven, and seeing the need around the world, seeing the call to love our neighbor, growing humble and recognizing the need in this world. So growing your heart as Jesus had compassion on those who he worked with too.
Mm-hmm.
That it sounds very like you've heard that in Sunday school, maybe, but just look around you and try to put Instagram or Facebook away for a while and explore the world, maybe through video in this COVID time or through books, and just to see what God is doing around the world and the need for the gospel and how broken we are as people and how great a Savior we have. And just grow your heart for missions. Grow your mind for missions. Read about local efforts in missions or global efforts, what different missionaries are doing, what mission organizations like Word and Deed are doing. And then think with discernment on how development can happen. You know, are we fostering independence in projects around the world? Growing your mind, how do missions work? How can we do them better? You know, you asked about the indigenous community. So what can we do? Well, take that case study and think through it. Do some research on the suicide rates in those communities. And why are they broken? They're broken because they have a broken relationship of their view of self, and they're not working, and they're not, you know, dive into that. And so grow your mind for missions, and then finally grow your passion for missions. And that may be taking your skills, let's say it's videography, taking your, what are your passions? You know, even chicken farming, you know, you can use chicken farming for missions.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, carpentry, cabinet building, you know, landscaping, how can you use it for missions, whether in your time, in your talent, or your treasure? And so I think there's such an opportunity. We have such an opportunity here in North America with what we've grown up with, the knowledge that we have, and how will we use it? Will we bury our talent, or will we duplicate it or grow it?
Yeah. Totally, I love that. That's like ties into, we don't say our slogan that we came up with for Real Talk enough, but our goal is to inform and inspire. And that's like, you just described that so well. Like, just inform yourself about missions and inspire yourself to go out and then use your talents, use your passion to do that. So it's a great summary.
Totally. And on the inspire side of things too, like, I guess practically, like, so you went and obviously did the business degree, got involved with Word and Deed. If Word and Deed is looking to expand, which I mean, maybe, I guess they are. Yeah. What's the best kind of route for someone to take if younger people are listening to this, are like, yeah, like I would want to do that, and I'm going to listen to Scott's advice and, you know, grow my mind and my heart and my passion. But then practically, like schooling wise, like, is a business degree kind of helpful for the roles that you see Word and Deed, you know, putting out and expanding, or are there other fields of study that would be of benefit for you folks at Word and Deed?
I think there's a perception that we're not all on the front line of missions, that, oh, Scott is a frontline worker for missions, but, you know,
we're not.
We're not.
Yeah.
Or you guys are not.
Yeah.
But that is not true. Your business, you know, selling doors, or, you know, you working alongside of him, you are on the front line of missions. You have such an opportunity to, let's say you make money and you can use that for God's kingdom. Like, that's, I guess, kind of my point, is that wherever you are and whatever degree you do get, let's say it's a nursing degree. Yeah, you can go on a medical mission, but also you're in the kingdom of God if you're caring for a patient in the ER one day and you care for them with the love of Jesus Christ. Like, you are a part of that kingdom. And so missions can be a misconstrued word sometimes, but to have the heart of Christ is a mission. And so I think for each one is not going to become a missionary or a mission worker or work for Word and Deed, but in a way we are all on the front line.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's well put. Because I struggle to see, like, sometimes how a degree, or like how education, we typically think of very like a secular thing. Like, you're going to go to a university. It's not really governed by, it's not governed by Christians for sure. How do you come out of that? And I went through a business degree too, and I thought about similar things. And this is like such an easy path now. I'm like, how would you do it without a business degree? But now, you're just one example. Like, I mean, you said, like, people think now Scott's on the front lines of missions. Well, how many years ago were you you were a business student? So, you can come at it from anyway. Like, and like you said, we're all on the front line. So
yeah, it's also just, I think it's neat to know just for people coming up too, like you said, like 16 to 18, like trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life.
Yeah.
To know that these opportunities exist is pretty neat, pretty cool. Like, because I always someone said to me, what was it again? You either work kind of in kingdom work and kingdom service. I mean, everything, again, I agree with your point. Everything is for the gospel.
Yeah.
But on a more practical level, you either typically go into a service, kingdom service type job. Like if you're a pastor, if you're a teacher, if you're working in a capacity like you are, or you go into something that like, it might not be as explicitly mission related or gospel centric. Like, for example, we sell doors. Like that's not, that's not like, you don't think, wow, like, John 3:16, like here's your door handle, like whatever. Sure. Like it's not that obvious, but, you either do something like that where you can make some more money and then support the kingdom efforts. Cause typically people who go into these types of, jobs often sacrifice, monetarily, like salary wise. Do you think that's a fair assessment in your view? Like, is it kind of a binary like that, or maybe do I have a wrong view of that from the Scott Dekorte perspective?
From a practical perspective, I totally see what you mean. And part of my weighing, what do I want to do with my life is that too. Like, could I lay stone and build beautiful interlocked patios for people? Yeah, sure I could. For the glory of God, absolutely. Does it feel like I'm on the front line? Maybe not. But there's that's the one option. Or the other option is go into mission work full time. My service and mission work is no higher than the landscaper laying block, right? Both of those could have given equal glory to God. And that's one perspective. Yeah. But in reality of every day, I hope that the landscaper sees that they are on the front line. That's my point. They are actually. Yeah, it's tough to see. I know it's hard. Every day you wake up, I got to lay this driveway. I got to plant this tree. Yeah.
That's what you got out of it? Yeah.
Or like, I got to teach this classroom of students. But, you're teaching them. You have such a job to mold them and shape them.
Yeah, I was recently introduced to, I think it's called, I can't remember. It's Christ. What is it called? Faith-driven entrepreneurship, I think it's called. I think it's a YouTube channel, but it's
nice.
It touches on this, and they have like a lot of stories from businesses and how they put Christ first in their business and how that has impacted not just their employees and the people that they work for, but like their communities and everything. So that's I definitely wanted to look up for people.
Cool.
That's very business centric. And I was introduced to that by my uncle, who's part of Deliberate You, which is like a Christian leadership.
Yeah. Darren Bosch. Right.
Yeah. So, and even that's like their focus is like on, how can we be Christian leaders? So
anyways, we're probably running out of time. Maybe just, I guess, to wrap it off, you gave a nice pitch to young people there, but also, what's the one thing, if you could pick one?
And older people
too. Yeah. Whatever age.
I know it was for young, but I have a heart for the young. But anyway,
anybody, yeah. Totally. But what's the one thing you're most excited for Word Deed in 2021? Looking forward for this year.
If he's going to visit another country.
I know we're tight for time. No.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Go.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how the gospel will reach more people through our partners. I'll give one final story. There was a community of beggars in a country I can't name, but there's a community of beggars there, and they lived basically by there are different festivals throughout the year. So there's a Muslim festival for part of the year, then there's a Hindu festival for part of the year, and a Christian festival. Well, at these festivals, these beggars would dress up in the clothing of the religion, Muslim, Hindu, Christian.
To get food?
To get alms, to get food, because that's a good charitable thing to do, right? Yeah. That's across religions, to give to the poor. Yeah. So that's how they would live. Well, COVID-19 came, and they could not do that no longer because no large gatherings could take place. This became a huge opportunity for the gospel to be shared, because as a Christian partner, we were able to work alongside them and sustain them for their immediate relief, but also start sharing the gospel with them. This is who you can be in Jesus Christ. You have dignity. You don't have to be beggars to get through for life. So this transformed them to a new reality, to look beyond their situation now into heaven. And if that's what I'm most excited about 2021, despite
That's cool. Yeah.
whatever's going to happen, despite how long COVID lockdowns continue or whether they're lifted, whether here in North America or around the world, is to see how the gospel will continue to unite believers in our communities to live a life that glorifies the Lord and transforms communities. So
Wow.
that's a big vision, but that's the one that's what I'm looking forward to.
Then you're in the right job. You're doing the right work.
Amen, man.
That's great.
And I'm looking forward to my first year of marriage.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
You just got married.
congratulations.
Just got
Congratulations.
married.
Yeah.
And I didn't say that at the beginning because somehow I got too distracted by missions and stuff.
Your wife maybe.
You had the outline, and your wife didn't make it on the outline.
Yeah.
Boy. But maybe you made the outline before you were married.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I saw the ring though. That's it.
Yeah.
So, congratulations.
Thank you.
All the
She's
best.
a wonderful, wonderful woman. I mean, I'm biased, but she really is, and she's a teacher in biology and science, and
Good stuff.
teaching from online, online schooling right now, but that's okay.
That's a struggle. Yeah. That's good. Good
All right.
stuff.
Well,
Hey,
thanks for coming on. We really
Thanks so
appreciate
much.
it. Blessings on all your work and your marriages and
Thanks
whatnot too.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for sharing with everybody. I think, hopefully this motivates some people and drives us all to view our lives a little different, in terms of mission work. So
All independence upon the Lord, for sure.
Absolutely.
And thank you for having real talk. Appreciate it, Chris.
indeed. All righty.
So-
We'll catch you next time, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Real Talk. You can send us your feedback by emailing us at reformedrealtalk@gmail.com. You can find us on social media by looking for the handle Reformed Real Talk. You can find us online by going to realtalkpodcast.ca. We look forward to your feedback, as that's what helps us grow and improve as podcasters. Real Talk is produced by myself, Lucas Holfluer, Tyler Vanderwood, and Tim Van Woudenberg. The theme music was created by Calvin Hutton. The table and cabinet behind me were made by Ethan Vanderwood of Eureka Woods. And finally, this sign in the studio was made by Zebra Signs. That's it for now, folks. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.